Hey friend, in this video, I'm showing you the perfect trick that I've found to help you with those pesky hard lines. So if you are new to watercolor painting or you're further along in your journey and you're still struggling with those icky, annoying hard lines where pigment kind of dries in this line outside, outlining this area of paint or a puddle of water, and it dries with this just harsh line around certain areas of your paintings, then these tricks that I'm sharing with you in this video are for you and are gonna really help you avoid those. So before we dive into this trick that I'm about to share with you, let's talk about what hard lines are. So hard lines happen specifically when you have too much water on your paper, usually too much water on your paper, and it creates this puddle of water. And so when there's pigment in that puddle, it eventually will start to pool because that puddle is kind of a slope. It will start to pool and push all of that pigment to the outer edges of the puddle, and you'll start to see that there's a darker concentration of pigment around the puddle, creating what's called a hard line. Oftentimes you'll see it in your cauliflowers or blooms on your paper where there's this kind of like spider webby look effect to it, and there's this jaggedy line of darker color that you will notice in your watercolor paintings. So if you've ever struggled with your hard lines, you're in good company. Every watercolor artist encounters hard lines. And even if you know these tricks, you're still gonna see them pop up here and there, because being absolutely 100% attentive of what I'm about to share with you isn't quite possible throughout every single painting, because you wanna be in the moment. But this is at least going to help you avoid those as much as possible. So now let's reveal the two tricks that will help you avoid hard lines as much as you possibly can. The first tip or trick is using 100% cotton paper. So my first go-to response whenever I get questions from students or comments on these YouTube videos from people who are learning watercolor, when they're asking about hard lines and why do I see these hard lines or darker areas around my paintings, my first answer or question is, what type of paper are you using? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use the most expensive paper or the exact paper brand that I recommend. However, I do recommend it because it is awesome. However, if you are using not 100% cotton paper, you are most likely going to run into hard lines a lot more frequently than if you do use 100% cotton paper. The reason for this is that cotton is better at absorbing the water and soaking it in so that it doesn't create all of those puddles. It doesn't mean that because you're using 100% cotton paper, that you'll never have puddles ever again. That's gonna lead me to my second trick in just a second. But it will help. It will at least help to mitigate how often you have those pools of water and pigment soaking up and then creating those hard lines. So first tip, what type of paper are you using? Make sure you're using 100% cotton paper. And as a little side note about paper too, I also think that using cold press paper versus hot press paper helps with this, resolving this issue as well, because the toothy texture or the bumps on the paper help to soak it in as well. Sometimes I've noticed, at least in my own experience, that when I do use hot press paper, which is the smoother watercolor paper, it just leaves a lot of room for errors and hard lines. So a couple tips there around paper. And then the second trick for avoiding hard lines is all about water control. I have a great video that goes way more in depth on this topic specifically, called the tea to butter exercise. It's a well-known exercise. Many teachers have taught this exercise, but it's really helpful, especially if you're newer to watercolor, to really understand how water works in your paint consistency and how to avoid hard lines especially when you're mixing up your lighter, more transparent colors when you're using a lot of water. But before you go to that video, I want to show you one simple trick to avoid hard lines as much as you possibly can, all by simply taking your brush, and before you're going to your paper, you're going to blot it on your paper towel to soak up any of that excess water. So even if you're using a pigment consistency that's more translucent, that's really watery, still, I want you, if you're gonna be painting a smaller area, I want you to go to your paper towel first to just dab or blot out some of that excess water before you go to your paper. You can always add more water, you can always add more pigment if you need to once you see it on your paper. But if you go and you're trying to paint, especially those smaller areas like petals or small leaves or something like that, and you use too much water, you're gonna have excess water, which is gonna create that puddle, which is gonna create those hard lines. So make sure you blot the excess water before going to your paper. And then again, if it's too dry, you can always add water or you can always add more paint after. So to sum it up, these couple of tricks will help you overcome those pesky hard lines. First, use good quality paper. Use 100% cotton paper. It will make a huge difference. Second tip or trick is to blot on your paper towel or your rag or whatever you use before you go to your paper, so you're not adding excess water to your paper. So try out these tips and share your results with me in the comments below. And if you need more deep dive instruction around watercolor techniques, color theory, supplies, techniques like the tea to butter exercise, water control, etc., then check out my course, the Everyday Watercolor Companion course. It's under $100. It is, in my opinion, the best deep dive watercolor course out there on the market. So check it out. It's also a video companion to my Everyday Watercolor books. You don't need my books in order to go through it, but it's basically going to give you a really in-depth look at how to use and apply all the main watercolor techniques for every type of subject, from abstract paintings to animals, plants, botanical, florals, sea animals, oceans, landscapes, etc. So check out the Everyday Watercolor Companion course, and then also check out my free 40-page ebook called The Complete Beginner's Guide to Watercolor. We'll link to it in this video so you can check that out as well, because I'm here to help you on your watercolor journey, if you know what I mean. So thank you as always for watching these videos, and I will see you in the next one.